so my plan for tonight, thank you for that introduction, Alex. Now, as Alex was just saying, my background is in primary school teaching, but I'm also trained in special education. I'm a mother of 3 boys, and I have worked with the multicultural playgroups. So I've worked with supporting children who have come from other countries and are integrating into Australia. And I have also done a lot of work with behaviour support. So currently I'm lecturing at Western Sydney University, and what I lecture on is behaviour support and also on creating engaging learning experiences. So generally I spend a lot of my time teaching beginning teachers how to create learning experiences and how to use teaching strategies that really help to engage the learner. So my point, well, I guess my aim for tonight is to really help you come away with some ideas on how you can take, I guess, those more teacher-directed, more worksheet-based activities and flip them to become really engaging, exciting, fun learning experiences for the children that you're working with. All right, so an hour is not a long time to do that, but hopefully by the time you've listened to this presentation, you'll go away with some great ideas, and you'll go away feeling excited with some ideas of things that you can try with the children that you're working with. All right, so the first thing I really want to just have a quick talk about, and I don't want to do too much theory, I want to get to that practical stuff pretty soon. But before we do that, I really just need to, I guess, address this idea of the difference between compliance and engagement. So what I'm talking about tonight and the activities that I will be discussing with you tonight, they're activities that we want to use to engage children. Now, generally speaking, if you think about traditional schooling or traditional teaching in any way, we've really, I guess, over-relied on this idea of compliance. So that means that children will do what they're told because, one, they know they have to. It's expected of them. Or maybe they'll do the activities because we might reward them with something like a sticker or a merit award or something like that. Now, that's not a bad thing. Okay, we all have to learn skills to and learn that there are expectations in certain areas of society, and we all like to be rewarded for things we've done if we've done something well. So there's nothing wrong with compliance, but what we have found in the education field is that when we engage students, so when we get them excited about the learning experience, when they are actually actively involved in their learning, when they're really turned on to that learning, then not only, it's pretty cool actually, because not only do behaviour challenges sort of disappear, but also we find that the children learn more, they retain that information, and they really understand what we're teaching them more when they're engaged in the experience. So I guess a simple way to put it is compliance would be that the kids are doing the work because they know they have to, or because they're going to get something in the end. Whereas engagement means that the kids are doing the learning activities because they want to. So that's what I'm going to aim to help you with today, to find some activities that the kids are really going to want to do. And I guess that's really important, especially in your field. You're getting children that are coming to you after school or on weekends. So that can be really challenging in itself, can't it? That they've sat in school all day, they've done what they're told all day, or it's the weekend and they think I'd rather be out playing or, you know, just relaxing. So if we can get them engaged and excited about the experiences you're doing with them, it's going to make your job easier as well. Now, what I have on this next slide here, really, all this is a nice fancy diagram that shows you what engagement is. So when a child is engaged in an activity, it kind of hits them in 3 different areas. It really impacts them. So behavioural. So when a child is in an engaged activity, when we're talking about an engaged lesson, the kids will be interacting with each other and they will be actively participating in the activities. You might be thinking, now I can think of some activities that I do with the kids that come to me in my classes where they're actually actively involved. The other way that we have to make sure kids are engaged, or the way that we can encourage engagement, is that it will get these kids on a cognitive level. So the kids are going to feel motivated. They're going to have to need some some degree of persistence. So we want them to really have to try that little bit harder and really work towards that higher order thinking. But also we want to hit them on an emotional level. When kids are engaged in an activity, they've got a good attitude towards that activity. They're excited, they're interested, they value that activity, and they also feel a real sense of belonging within the classroom that you're working in and within that activity. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, great, Kelly, that sounds wonderful, but how do we do that? Well, the good news is I'm not expecting you to work all of that out. Some really smart people have done lots of studies and have actually worked out some teaching strategies that really work to get kids engaged. Now, there's lots of different strategies that we can use, and obviously I'm not going to be able to get through them all during this 1 hour presentation. But what I will do is I'm going to focus on 6 main strategies that you can use in the classroom. So when you're teaching your classes, that can really help engage students. And I'm going to show you how you can take, so for each of these strategies, what I'll do is I'll show you a worksheet-based activity. And then I'll show you a more engaged student-centered activity. So when we talk about a student-centered activity, it means that the children are actively involved. They're the ones that are creating the meaning. Now, this, look, by no means am I saying that using worksheets and things like that are bad or never to be used, but I just want to show you other ways where you can enhance the worksheet, or other ways where maybe you could make these activities more engaging. Because remember, if we can engage students, we're not going to have to worry so much about behaviour issues. And we also know that they're going to retain the information that you're trying to teach them more, and they're also going to understand things better. So let's have a look through some of these. The first one that I'm going to start with is games-based learning. Okay, so this is one of my favourite things to do with kids. Now, what we've got here is, this is just a worksheet that could be used, say if we were teaching the Spanish language. Okay, so teaching phrases. Now, I've just put just a little snippet of that worksheet. So it shows you that basically what the student would be asked to do would just be complete the table. So to look at the word hello in English, find the word hello in Spanish, and then write it down. There's nothing wrong with this worksheet. This might be something that you could use when you're first teaching these phrases. But anyone who teaches language knows that the way that we really, or that the way that students really learn and retain that information is through rote and practice. Okay, so to practice those skills over and over again. Now, something like this, if we were just writing those things, could after a while get quite boring for the students. So what about if you decided, yeah, you could teach those phrases, but how about if you did something engaging like games-based learning? Now, the really exciting thing about games-based learning is, number one, it's fun. So already you've got the students' attention. When you think about what kids, think about the children that you work with, okay? So think about that age group. And what you need to, if you want to do something that they can relate to, playing, all kids can relate to playing games. It's part of what they do, is just fundamentally who they are. The other great thing about games is the students that you're working with probably already know a whole lot of games from being at school. Okay, so at school they probably would have learned how to do things like bingo. So I've got bingo up here, but also things like concentration, memory with cards. They know a whole lot of sort of dice games and card games and lots of different games, matching type games that you can use, and then you can just adapt to the language that you are teaching. I've got up here a little picture of a computer game that you can find. So there's lots of great technology that you can also use. So, I mean, that takes a little bit of research on your own part, looking around and seeing what games are there. And the other thing that I've got here is this is actually just a Spanish version of the game. I've gone blank. My children play it all the time. What's the name of the game? Anybody? Thank you. Okay, and the beauty of using something like this is, again, the kids probably know how to use it. They know how to play the game. And so practicing those skills in games in a game situation. Now, if you were working in a classroom, now I see you guys get, so for 2 hours a week is about average that I believe you would see your students. So you could put something like this on a rotation. So if you added another game, so if you had a computer-based game, a game that they already know, like a card game, you had a bingo game, and then maybe you had something like a concentration game or some other form of game-based learning, you could set 4 groups. So say you had 20 children in your class, then you could have 5 in each group. And you could say that for that lesson, so it might be that the lesson before you've taught them the basics and these whatever language concepts you want them to learn, you can teach them to them, and then you can just put them in groups. So 5 would work on one game, 5 would work on this game, 5 would work on the game, and then 5 students would be in the other game. Half an hour each game. They can play that game for half an hour. You ring a bell, you press a buzzer, then they rotate, and then they play another game. Now, that could actually take up your whole 2 hours. And that's practicing the skills they need to do, but they're engaged because they're playing, okay? So that's only one way, but games-based is a really great, games-based activities are fantastic for kids because they are automatically engaged, because they are involved, and because they're interested in it, because playing games is just what kids do. So there's one thing to start. Another way you could integrate something like this would be that you didn't have to do it for the whole 2 hours that you've got them, but it might be just something that you played some games at the start or at the end of each lesson, just to get the kids engaged and excited about what they're going to do. All right, so games-based one, a lot of you are probably all over that one, but I like to mention it because it's tried and tested and I think it works beautifully. Okay, so let's have a look at this next idea, this idea of role playing. Now, again, a lot of you or some of you may have used role play when teaching students before. So I just want to mention a way that perhaps I would use role play if I was teaching language, okay? So if I was teaching language to students. So what we've got here is a worksheet that's got Italian animals. And now this might be a worksheet that you do with the students. So you might start by, it's just a matching. So they would look at the animal, they'd match it to the word in Italian and then to how that word is pronounced. If that was all you did on Italian animals, I can pretty much guarantee that the children aren't going to retain that information. So by the time they come back next week, they probably will have forgotten. Now you could get them to just practice saying it each week, but that itself is going to get a little bit tedious, a little bit boring for the kids. So what if after doing an activity like this, you did some role play with these children? So I'm going to take you to the next slide. So it may mean that you put some posters around your room, wherever it is that you're teaching, that show, again, a picture of the animal, the name of the animal in English, and then the name of the animal in the language that it is that you are teaching. And then you play a game with the kids where they get to role play. So for a start, you may say the English word. And when you say that animal in English, the children start to act out that animal. Then you may start changing it so you say the name of the animal in the language you're teaching. Now, this would still work because the students, if they don't know straight away, if they haven't recalled that word, the good thing is they've got 2 chances. They can look up at the picture on the wall and they can work that out themselves, or they'll start to look at it, look at the kids around them. And then they can start to act out that animal as well. The beauty of doing role play like this is, the other thing is, if you've got children who are a little bit anxious or a little bit shy, who don't want to get up and perform in front of a whole group, this allows them to actually get up and play and be part of a role play within a huge group. Okay, and when you're doing things within a huge group, people aren't focusing on each other. They're really just worrying about what they're doing. So the way you would then extend that is that eventually you could take those posters off and start saying those names of the animals in the language that you're teaching, and the kids could just role play that animal. Now that's just one example that you could use with animals, but imagine if you were doing that at the start of each lesson or each time you see those kids. Okay, so that's going to be more engaging, more fun way for the kids to practice a skill that they need to practice sort of over and over again. The other really great news about getting kids up and moving is that we've found that for a lot of kids to be able to retain information. So I don't know, some of you may have come across working with children with some behaviour challenges. Now that's an area I love working in. So children who might perhaps have ADHD. Okay, these children, we're finding more and more that in order for them to focus, they need to move around. So when you add that element of movement into the learning, a lot of children are actually more likely to really understand and retain the information you're teaching. So in regards to that, role play can be a great and really useful tool to work with. All right, so let's have a look at what have I got next. Okay, so inquiry-based learning. Now there's a big push for this in schools at the moment. And I guess the reason we really push for it in schools is that now when we look at the kids that we're teaching, the skills that they're going to need to get jobs in the future is they're going to need to be able to be creative and to learn things and work things out for themselves, to solve problems and to work collaboratively. So you will find that the kids that come to you will hopefully already have some inquiry-based learning skills because it will be something that they've done in school. So what I have here is a more sort of traditional activity that you could use. So for example, this one would be if you were teaching children about traditional Korean dress, okay? Now this is not a bad activity. In fact, this is a good activity you could do with kids. Cutting and gluing is always a good activity to do with children. Again, you've got that movement and they're moving things around. So for kids that really need to move to stay focused, that's a good way to do it. But we could make it so much more exciting for children, so much more engaging. Okay, so yes, you could absolutely do a lesson like this, but imagine if you did something like this. Imagine if your children walked into the classroom that you're working in, okay? And around the classroom, they were immersed in different things. So in this example, imagine if there was clothes all around the classroom. So there was Western type clothes, like you can see up here. So we've just got our shorts and our t-shirts and things that children would more traditionally in Australia be wearing. And then you would have some traditional Korean clothes around the room. You might even have clothes from other cultures around the room. And you won't mark or label or tell the children which clothes belong to which particular culture. Around the room, you will also have access to books. So it could be picture books, it could be more information texts. Again, it really depends on the children you're working with. And you would probably, and I would also recommend that you had access to the internet so that they could do some of their own research. And in inquiry-based learning, what we would then do is we'd give them a problem that they had to solve. And then we'd let the kids go off and solve that problem on their own, well, or in groups. Now, the really cool part about this is, okay, it does take, sorry? Oh no, I think we've just got a microphone that needs to be muted. Okay, so what I was about to say was the really cool thing about this is it does take a little bit more prep work than something like this. So a worksheet, it's not going to take you long to get ready. You might not have a lot of time. You just want to print something out, done. So something like this takes a little bit more work. You've got to find all of these items and get all of this stuff ready. But the beauty is when you hit the classroom, you step back in terms of the teaching and you let the kids work this out on their own. So for example, this particular activity, what I might say to them is I'm going to break my group of 20 students. I'm going to break them into 4 equal groups with 5 kids in each group. And each group is going to have a different question, okay? So group 1, I might say to them, I want you to work out, to identify, to find a traditional Korean outfit for a man. And then you can set the parameters, like they need to be able to show the rest of the group when it comes time to sharing. They need to be able to show the rest of the group the items of clothing, plus they need to be able to name them in Korean and explain if there's any history or anything behind why they wear those particular clothes. The next group, we might ask them to do the same, but we might ask them to do it for a woman's outfit. It might be that we get one group to do it for a child who is a boy and then a female child. So you can see that we can still cover all of those areas, but the children are discovering this themselves. There's something really exciting about discovery. Kids are built for discovery. That's what they do, okay? They're curious. What happens after, well, what has happened in traditional schooling is that after, I guess, a period of time, we've almost knocked that out of them, this curiosity. It's been in schools of the past, it was more, I'm the teacher, I've got the knowledge, so I'm going to pass that on to you and you're just going to take it from me, okay? I'm right. The beauty of inquiry-based learning is you facilitate, so the kids get in there and they learn. And you can just move around per group, giving assistance as needed. And it's them that's coming to the conclusion themselves. I mean, I want you to try and think that back to a time now yourself when you've learned something that you thought was really hard, but you've worked at it and yourself, you've been able to solve that problem. It's an amazing feeling when you have that breakthrough and you solve that problem. You also tend to remember it for longer than you would had I just come up and given you the answer. Okay, so inquiry-based learning is a really fantastic tool that we can use to engage our students in the activities. Again, if we can engage our students, we know that they're going to remember things longer, and hopefully you're not going to have as many issues with worrying about behaviour where the kids are doing the right thing, because they're going to be so excited about what they're doing, so turned on to the activities that they're doing that they're not even going to think about misbehaving. So that's one of the beauties of inquiry-based learning. Now, the next one I want to move you on to, okay, so this is research-based learning. So just like inquiry-based, where the students went out and found their own knowledge, it's great to give students the opportunity to do their own research. But something that can also be really beneficial is to let the students be led by their interest. Okay, so rather than just setting the same activity for all students, if we let students choose what they're interested in, number one, it can absolutely increase motivation. The other thing that it can do is it can give children a sense of belonging. When children feel within their group that they've got choice, that they've got a voice in that little classroom that you've got there, where you work with them for that 2 hours a week, they've got a choice in what they do. It shows them that they belong within that group, and it shows them that their opinion matters. So interest-led is another really good tool that we can use to engage students. So what I've got here is a fact file. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've used something like this in my own classroom with children, and there's nothing wrong with it. I gave them this fact file. So it was one sheet that asked these main questions. So capital city, population, languages spoken, and so on. And then the other sheet that looked for things like famous landmarks, famous people, and so on. And I've given students access to the internet and let them go and find these things themselves. And it's not a bad lesson. It was a good lesson. They went and they did things, but it can be made better. And one way, if you really want to engage the students, like I was saying, is to work with this interest-led. So it might be that you all work together on this first page to get this information. But it might be when it comes to things like famous landmarks, popular food, traditions, popular activities, and famous people, that you could let the students break up into we've got 5 topics there. So 5 different groups where they can choose to go to the group and learn about whichever one it is, whichever topic it is that they're interested in. Okay, and then they could work on that. So you send the kids off, they do their research, whether it be from books or whether it be from the computer. And then once their research is finished on that area that they're interested in, they can become the teachers and share the rest of the class. Now, there's some good things about getting kids to teach the rest of the class. Number one, gives your voice a break. You can sit back and let them be the teachers. Number 2, kids get a lot out of teaching each other. Children automatically respect and are interested in what their peers think and what their peers say. So already you get their interest by putting their peers up in front of them. But we all know, anyone who's ever taught something knows that you've really got to understand a concept at a different level to teach it. So you can kind of have an understanding of something, but if you want to teach it to somebody else, you've really got to understand it. So when we're expecting students to teach it to somebody else or to teach something to somebody else, they really do have to have a really strong understanding. And another thing you'll find is if students have taught something to their peers, they're more likely to really retain and remember what that was that it was taught. So even if it's not this research-led activity, if you use students to teach each other things, it's always going to help them to retain that information. So they're really engaging in the activity. All right, I'm just going to pause here for a minute and just have a quick look at the chat to see that I haven't missed any questions. Okay, so I'm just looking through the chat now, and what's really great to see is I can see that lots of people are using online games and different sorts of games. Excellent. I did say that I thought you might be all over this one. Keep using them. So well done for those people that are already using the games. I think games-based learning is it's just fun. And you can see that children, I remember doing some games-based learning with a particular child that I was working with who was actually really sort of difficult to get engaged. It was a child who had quite a few, quite some, I guess, challenging behaviour issues. And I remember I just thought, I was trying to teach them things and I thought, you know what, scrap it. Next week when I work with this child, and this was a one-on-one situation, that I'm just going to turn everything into a game. And I remember at the end of that lesson, I said, well, how did you think things went? Did you enjoy that? And the student said to me, yeah, that was great. We didn't do any learning. And I thought, wasn't that a wonderful experience? They had no idea that I was teaching. They didn't realize that they'd done a whole lot of learning. All right, so I'll close the chat because I can't see any other questions, and I'll keep going with what I was talking about. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk to you about is this idea of project-based learning. So this one kind of uses those inquiry-based skills that your students might have, or it uses those research skills. But it's something that you could actually set, if you set a project for students, you could actually set this for the entire term. So an activity like the one I'm going to discuss with you next, it might be that you're seeing these students for the school term, say every Tuesday afternoon for 2 hours. In that session, that first session, you could explain the activity, and then they could, for the next 5 or 6 weeks, they could just work on that project when they come. And it's really nice because if you get them excited when they start, if you get them engaged in the topic, you'll watch, they'll look forward to coming to your class. They'll come running in, they'll know what they're doing, and they'll go, if you hit the nail on the head and get a good project-based learning activity going on, you'll notice because the kids run in and they go straight to their stuff and they just pull it out and they start working on it. And you know you've got them engaged. And then those last few weeks of term, it might just be that the students are presenting what they've done, presenting their project to the other children within the class. So again, you can see that something like this would take quite a bit of planning, but you become the facilitator rather than the teacher who just gives all that information. Okay, so you get in there and you give help as help's needed, and you let the children sort of guide where they're going. So an example that I'm using here is Chinese New Year. So for example, you could read them a book on if you were teaching them about Chinese New Year, you could read them a book, you could show them some things from Chinese New Year and show them and then talk to them about how each of the items, how you'd say that in China, that you'd name those in the Chinese language. It might be that you do something like this, so a closed passage where they have to find the missing words and find the words up here and put them in the missing spots. Okay, all of those. I'm not saying these things are wrong, but imagine this. Imagine if you set up a classroom with a whole lot of different objects to do with Chinese New Year. So you've got some decorations around, you've got food around, you've got things that could be used as presents, or you've got the costumes and the clothes and all of that sort of stuff. Imagine if you immerse the students in the culture. Now, that just, I guess, throws me back to when I was teaching years ago when I was teaching in year 4. I taught year 4 for about 3 years in a row. And I remember we were doing doing a unit on Japan. And for that unit, I had some really great activities set up. But what we were doing is we were covering it like one activity for an hour a week throughout the school week. And we did, and the kids loved it. They loved learning about other cultures, and we learnt some language, and we learnt some things about different celebrations and all of that sort of stuff, and they loved it. But the next year, when again I was supposed to teach that unit, it was one of those crazy years where there's lots of extracurricular activities and lots goes on. And before I knew it, we were getting towards the end of the term, and I hadn't done my unit on Japan. So I made this decision, well, myself and the teacher that I was working with, the other year 4 teacher, and we said, let's have a Japan day. So we brought in a whole lot of things, and whether it be, we had origami, we had sushi making, we had a whole lot of different things, and we just immersed the students in the culture. And they moved around between activities. We got parent helpers in to help us out, and they moved around the activities. And they were just really immersed in that culture. And they were so excited about the idea of Japanese Day that what I found was that what originally just started out as me trying to fit in stuff that I hadn't had time to teach that term actually turned into the best and most exciting unit I have ever taught on a country. So don't underestimate the, I guess, the impact of immersing students in something. So back to this idea of this project-based activity. So like I was saying, you could immerse them in things from Chinese New Year, and then you could set them a project, and that project could be for the term. And that project might be that you want them to, you set the parameters. So for that project, they need to organise a Chinese New Year celebration. And you've got things around that will sort of jut ideas and things that you can move around and talk to the students about each of these things, and they can ask you questions about them. But then you can set parameters like, when you create your own Chinese New Year celebration, I want you to include food, so the food that you're going to serve, the clothes that are going to be worn, maybe the gifts that are going to be given, and the decorations that you're going to use. You might also say, I want you to also make Chinese New Year cards written in Chinese. Okay, so not written in English, but written in Chinese. Okay, so it could be that that's something that then they can then work on. You could give them choice. You might say that they have to have 5 aspects to their Chinese New Year celebration, but they can choose those with the help of you. But the idea is that they're immersed in it, and then they work through those activities, and you give them tools that they can use to research, whether it be books, worksheets, computer, those sorts of things, and they can work through using those things to create their own project. Again, they can be engaged because it's something that they are creating themselves. And any of you who have been, I guess, if you think back to your own education, if you've been involved in a project or putting something together, it's likely that you still remember that, because when you are involved in creating something and coming to that knowledge yourself, and you're more engaged, you're more likely to remember it. I'm just checking chat again. Oh, look, there's some really great ideas that are coming up on chat. So when I finish going through these this last method, I'm going to get you to share some of these ideas as well. So hold on to those ideas that you're sharing in the chat. That's great. Okay, so the last engaging activity that I want to, or learning, sorry, teaching strategy that I want to share with you is sensory-based learning. Now, I have to be honest, this is probably my favorite of all of them. And that comes from the fact that more recently, I work in special education, okay? So with children, I did mention that I major in students with behaviour challenges, but I also work with a lot of children on the autism spectrum. I myself have a son on the autism spectrum, so that has kind of really led my interest in working with children with autism, but also children with behaviour challenges, or also children who have got a learning disability or a developmental delay.
Yeah.
And what I've found working with these children is that this sensory-based learning can be incredibly effective. So what we mean when we talk about sensory-based learning is what I'm doing right now is I'm teaching really to your auditory system. So you're listening to me. Some of you will be sitting there able to take it all in. Others will go, she's been talking at us for about 36 minutes now. I'm actually struggling to understand what she's talking about because I'm not really somebody who learns by listening. So what I do is in my presentations, I try to add some visuals because a lot of people are visual learners, and hope that will also get some of you involved and help you to understand. But ideally, if I was teaching this presentation in an ideal world, it wouldn't be over Zoom. I'd have you in a room with me, and I'd be talking about these things, you'd be seeing them, and then I'd let you get in and actually have a go at these activities. And you would be more likely to really retain that information and to understand it at a greater level. Well, kids are the same, okay? Now, the reason I think that sensory-based activities work so well, perhaps with children on the autism spectrum, is that often children on the autism spectrum have an auditory processing delay. So it takes them it's a little bit harder for them to understand things when you're just saying it to them. And if you put them in a busy environment, that makes it even harder again. If we're talking about kids with maybe ADHD, we talked about how that they need to move to learn. Well, sensory-based learning, that really allows them to get in and move and touch things and use that movement. So what I've got here are some pictures of how you could incorporate sensory-based learning, okay? So in these sorts of activities, the student will be using the sense of, they will use their auditory sense, because we'll get them to say whatever it is. So if it's a word that they're saying in another language, my apologies that these are all in English, but when it came down to finding some pictures of sensory-based activities, I actually was only able to find them using the English alphabet. But of course, you could use whatever alphabet it is that you're teaching, or whatever words it is in the language that you're teaching, it would just work the same. Okay, so as they're doing these activities, you would say the name of either the letter or the word or the phrase or whatever it is. You might get them to say it. They can see it because it's visually there in front of them, but they've also got that tactile, that kinesthetic sense where they're actually feeling what they're doing, okay? And an activity like this is great because it really doesn't matter what the learning style of the child is in the classroom. Chances are you're going to hit their learning style, okay? Chances are you're going to get them. So, and they're engaged because they're in there and they're doing and they're making. And to them, it feels like play. And if we're talking about making something that students are interested in, what do students do? What do kids do? Kids like to play. So already it's geared towards their interest because they're playing. So what I've got here, if we just have a look at some of these pictures, this one is just, well, that's the letter S, but what they've done is that would have been written in like black underneath it, and then the students just get the pipe cleaners and they twist it around and then they make the letter, okay, and they're actually feeling it. You can do things like this one up towards the top here, where they're actually gluing things. So I'll often get students to, I do it when I'm teaching kids in a classroom, when I'm teaching them spelling, okay, so obviously that's English words, but I'm just teaching general spelling. I'll actually get the students to write the word they're learning, to get a glue stick and go over the letters, and then to put glitter on it, tip the glitter off, and then they can actually feel the letters. So as they're learning them, they're saying the letters that they need to do, they can, and they're actually feeling them at the same time. And that could be something that you could use with whatever language it is that you're teaching. Play-Doh is another good one we can use, so we can get them to draw in Play-Doh. The other thing you can do with Play-Doh is you can actually get them to make the letters, or say you're getting them to make numbers or whatever it is, or to write certain just write certain characters in the language that you're teaching. You get them to roll up that Play-Doh and actually make it on the table. Now, this one that I've got down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's actually shaving cream. Now, I know some people go, oh, at the thought of getting out shaving cream or getting out paint or things like that. Look, if that happens to be, personally, I'm all for it. Buy paint that washes out. Floors can be vacuumed, you know, shaving cream can be washed off. I think that I don't think our kids sort of get messy enough anymore. I think that that's really impacting their development. But that's coming from me as someone who works in special education. But for you, where you're working, if you think, I can't stand the thought of having, so in this bottom left-hand corner, that's coloured sand. If you think, I can't stand the thought of putting sand in a tray because I know what's going to happen, they're going to tip the tray over and there's going to be sand everywhere, then there are ways around it. Like I said, I'd go for it. Think, oh, well, I'll vacuum the sand up, I'll take in a dust buster. But if it's something that really bothers you or something that isn't allowed in the place that you're teaching, a really great way to get around it is the good old sandwich bag. So in the middle here, if you get a sandwich bag and actually fill it with paint and then zip it up, the students can still make the shapes in that paint. Or over here, you can see they've used some sort of, I'm not even sure what they are, some sort of material they've put inside there, and then they're drawing it with toothpicks. Okay, so that whatever it is that you're using, it stays within the sandwich bag. Okay, so that's another option that you can have. But actually letting kids get in and feel is going to help them remember. And I guess when you are learning a new language, a lot of it really is that trying to remember and that retaining of that information. So those things where we get to engage and practice and play and feel, these are all going to help our students to get in and remember those things. All right. Before I move on to the next thing, does anyone have any questions about the things that I have just shown you? You can either type them into the chat or you can just unmute your microphone and just ask. No? All right. So what I was going to get you to do next is, sorry, Alex, are you still there?
Yes. I'll make you the host then.
Yeah, because I was just going to say I was going to put them into breakout groups, but I can't do that.
Oh, you will soon. Just bear with me.
No problem.
I'll be sending you a message later on so that you can make me the host again, because then I can close everything and talk to people just for a second.
Okay.
There you go. All yours.
Thank you. All right. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to break you up into smaller groups, because there's quite a lot of you. What have I got? There's 190 of us here tonight. So what I'm going to do is break you into smaller groups. And within those smaller groups, I want you to just have a chat with each other and share some of your ideas. So the first thing that I'll get you to do when I join those groups, so what will happen is I will click to put you into what we call breakout groups. On your screen, something will pop up that will ask you to join a group. It'll say you've been invited to the group. You're just going to click and say that you're going to join the group, and then it will take you off to a page where there'll just be 4 or 5 of you. Okay, and then you can start talking. When I want to bring you back into the main group, so bring us all back together, I'll press something on my end, on my computer, and another message will come up to you saying you've got 60 seconds to join the main group. And then it will give you a button that you can press to just join back to the main group. Okay, so it's all pretty simple. But when you're in that group, what I want you to do is within that group, I'd like you to just have a talk about maybe, I was reading through that chat and some people have already got some really great engaging ideas. So I want you to share those ideas, because I think it's really important that we have colleagues that we can share and learn from. I think this is a really nice opportunity to do that, because some of you are going to have better ideas than I ever have. Okay, so I want you to share those. The other thing that I want you to do once you've shared some of those ideas is to maybe identify or talk about an activity that you've been doing with your students that you think, you know what, that could really be more engaging. And then together as a group, let's see if you can come up with some ideas. Thanks to all those people that joined the breakout rooms. I can see that people are just coming back now. Excellent. I think it looks like everybody is back now. Look, as you were talking in those breakout rooms, I was going through and just sort of popping into different rooms and listening to the discussions that were going on, thinking that maybe I would need to help and give you some ideas on where to, where to go. But the discussions were flowing. It was fantastic. In fact, just popping in and out of those rooms, I actually got to learn some things myself. So some really, really wonderful ideas. Now, my apologies to people for some reason that if they've been put into a group and nobody else joined, because obviously that wasn't for those groups where they did have the members join and everybody was sort of engaged and talking, obviously got more out of that. But like I was saying, as I was popping around, there were some really great ideas that were coming out. So look, we are just about out of time. I was going to sort of come back as a big group and then sort of keep discussing or just give you a chance to share some of those ideas. But what I might do is, because we are out of time, on the bottom of I'm just going to share again. Sorry, hang on a second. Just resharing my presentation. You can see that that down here is my email address, so k.jorda@westernsydney.edu.au. So if you did have a particular activity that you thought, I really need some ideas on how to make it engaging, it's something that my students have to learn, but I can't think of a fun way to really present it to the kids, you're more than welcome to email me and ask me that, and ask me a question, and I will help you any way that I can. But I think we're just about out of time. So can I just say thank you to everybody and for everyone that got involved in those discussions. And it was nice to hear some of your ideas and to learn some things from you as well.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks, Kelly. That was excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Highland.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
for your class.
Thank you.
Could you just
Bye.
make me,
Thank you so much.
Kelly, just
Thank
make me
you
the
so
host
much.
again? That'd be great.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex,
Thanks,
you want to be
Alex.
the
Thank
host?
you, everyone.
Thank you, Alex,
Thank
and
you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Alex.
Okay,
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Kelly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
I've just got a
Alex
couple of,
and
Thank
Kelly.
you,
I'd
Alex.
like to announce
Thank you. Bye-bye.
for
Thank
next
you.
week.
Bye.
See you next time.
Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye.
next week.
Thank you. Look, next week, don't forget, we've got another session. It's called, and this one's on technology, helpful technology for the classrooms by Grant Jones. And Grant lectures in the Master of Teaching for Primary. So if anyone's interested, please spread the word for next week's session. Same time, 7 p.m. on Monday. Now, somebody asked about about if there are any assignments. No. This is a federation organised course through Western Sydney University. It's something where there is no need to be to be doing any assignments. So it's something that we offer to you for free, and it's a 7-week course. The materials, as we know, as I said, you'll find the slides or the presentation that is on the YouTube channel. Just Google Federation YouTube, New South Wales Federation, that is, Federation of Community Language Schools YouTube, and you'll find it there. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I think you should all know by now. But if anyone's got any questions, you know where to contact me. I'll get you into the Google Classroom, and we'll be able to then share lots and lots of other material that we've presented in the past. And last and not least, don't forget that we've got other master classes continuing from last year. We had Beniko Mason from Japan, don't forget, and we'll be having Scott Thornbury at the end of the month. Now, he was a guest last year, Scott Thornbury, great speaker. He does lectures, and I said this last year, all over the world. He's very highly respected, full of ideas. Now, to do this in 1 hour, we should be able to get some great information out of him. Apart from that, don't forget that Editio, the learning management system, we've got loads of people that have signed up. Don't miss this opportunity if you're a community language school. It's free. It's the first time ever that it's been offered. Federation has purchased the licenses for you. Any questions about that, check my email, It's on the bottom of my emails, any email that I've sent the last few weeks. That's it, everybody. Have a great dinner. We hope to see you next week. Thanks for
Hi, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good
Thanks,
night.
Alex.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.